Welcome to Write, Writer, Write. I'm your host, Deborah Froese, and today we'll look at a great way to get your creative juices flowing again. If you're new to a regular writing practice or you've been away for a while, don't be surprised if you find yourself staring at the page trying to get started, even if you have all kinds of ideas tumbling around in your head. You sit down to write, and you aren't sure where to begin. If you've ever been there, you are not alone. That's where I found myself as the Manuscript Momentum Challenge began. I hadn't looked at my manuscript since July, and even then, my writing had been kind of hit and miss. The story had settled into my bones, but I couldn't quite visualize the scenes for all the ideas flitting around my head. They were jumbling with thoughts that had nothing to do with my story. So I spent the first day reviewing, trying to reconnect. On day 2, I nearly fell into the revision trap, wrestling with my overstuffed first chapter. But I decided to move on and deal with it later because why fuss over something that may need to change anyway? Day 3 brought a few more words, but my creativity still felt stifled. I only had an hour, but that wasn't the problem. It was the mental clutter. A long to-do list and the weight of a looming deadline on a big editing project flattened my imagination. By that evening, I decided to clear some space, not in my schedule, but in my head. I returned to a practice that had served me well in the past. I ignored the call of Netflix, slipped on my headphones, turned up the playlist I'd made for my story, and just breathed. Slowly, deeply, reminding myself I had the whole evening to explore. No pressure, no word count, just curiosity. And then something shifted. I pictured my protagonist, who she was, where she was, what she wanted, and I started to write, not a scene or a chapter, anything like that, just thoughts, stream of consciousness, one idea flowing to the next. By the time I set my pen down, I had a few pages of notes and enough fodder to keep me writing for days. But mainly, by giving myself that space, I found creative resonance with my project again. That's something far deeper than mere excitement about what I was doing. It made my story feel real and alive, purposeful. And the next morning when I sat down to write at my regular practice time, everything flowed. There is a reason handwriting reaches deeper inside of us. When you put pen to paper, you're not just recording words, you're engaging your whole brain. Neuroscientists have found that handwriting, unlike typing, triggers areas responsible for sensory processing, motor coordination, and higher-level thinking. Everything fires together. So when these regions light up in sync, they link body and mind, allowing you to feel what you're writing, to immerse yourself in it in a far deeper way. Each stroke of the pen engages emotion, movement, and memory, sparking fresh ideas as your body becomes part of the thinking process, part of the story. Typing, by contrast, uses far fewer of those networks. It's efficient, but that efficiency comes at a cost. Each keystroke is identical. Press, release, repeat. Your brain doesn't need to shape or guide the movement, so the act becomes automatic, not creative. Instead of exploring ideas, you tend to focus on output, how the words look, sound, or flow across the screen. That mechanical rhythm keeps you at the surface of thought. Because it's so easy to delete or rearrange, the analytical mind takes over, so you're refining your words before your imagination has time to wander. Typing is excellent for polishing ideas, but handwriting is better for generating them. The movement of your pen across the page, the feel of the paper, all of these aspects connect your brain and engage it with creativity. And there's another layer to it, one that has less to do with cognition and more to do with physiology. When we work on screens, our eyes and nervous systems are constantly processing blue light. Blue light suppresses melatonin and stimulates alertness long after we've stopped typing. At night, that stimulation can interfere with rest. Over time, it disrupts the natural rhythms that creativity depends on. Add to that the subtle buzz of electromagnetic frequencies, like the constant flicker of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and all the emissions from your devices, and your brain never truly rests. It needs rest to be creative. Writing by hand removes all those interferences and draws us into a quieter sensory world. Your mind begins to wander in the best possible way towards story and possibility. That's exactly what happened for me that night. When I picked up my pen and gave myself permission to wander, something shifted. The act of writing by hand helped me reconnect, not just with my story, but the rhythm of my own thoughts, with a level of resonance that told me, this is the way. If you decide you'd like to try pen and paper, you are in good company. Some of today's most celebrated writers still reach for old-fashioned tools. Stephen King says handwriting brings him closer to the raw act of writing, and I think now you can understand why. J.K. Rowling drafted the first Harry Potter book by hand. Joyce Carol Oates apparently spends hours each day writing longhand. Neil Gaiman prefers a fountain pen, and Quentin Tarantino scripts his films in notebooks. Even George R.R. Martin wrote Song of Ice and Fire by hand. So maybe there's something to it. Creativity thrives on presence, something contemporary life often sucks away from us. Handwriting slows the mind to the pace and rhythm of your hand. It leaves room for deeper reflection and connection, the very qualities that make stories breathe. The first few days of the Manuscript Momentum Challenge reminded me to make space, not just time, for my project. So now I'll spend some time in the evening priming my creativity with handwriting, sleep on my thoughts, and then in the morning, after my walk, and after I put the coffee on, I'll turn to my laptop and type, where the blue light will actually be helpful. If you're finding it hard to get started, give yourself a few minutes to let go and pick up your pen. Let your mind wander and see where it takes you. If you can make that mental space to find resonance with your creativity, you may find it's easier and even more rewarding to keep up your writing practice. Find out what changes for you when your hand moves slower than your thoughts. Thanks for joining me on Write, Writer, Write. If this episode helped you reconnect with your creativity, pass it on and keep picking up your pen.